So, hello everyone, and welcome to this channel where people talk about their awakening experiences and where we also just discuss about these topics. And I'm very happy to welcome back David Bingham. Uh, he
Okay.
already gave an interview and we had a discussion about his experiences. And actually, we are going to dive a little bit deeper today. So, if you're interested and have the whole context, I would suggest that you watch the first interview, and I will put a link in the. I think this is the right side when I do that. But yeah, it's going to pop up on the right side of your screen and maybe have a look at that before. But it's going to be very interesting and a very deep conversation, anyways, about certain experiences on his journey and how these peak experiences somehow fit into a red uh, line of his life, and maybe then you can try to detect your very important stages in your life, and maybe you can learn a lot about this when you have an open mind. Then maybe your life is giving you like these peak experiences and clues. So I'm very happy to talk about that. And I ask you as the listener to just keep an open mind. And also, please, if you find these topics important, help us in spreading awareness by hitting the subscribe button. If you like the interview, give us a like because it really helps to spread the awareness that other people come across these videos in this large cosmos of YouTube. So that would help a lot. And of course, for yourself, that you will be announced when there's another interview about these topics on this channel. But now let's dive into David's peak experiences. Thank you very much for coming back, David.
Delighted to be back, and it's great to see you again. And yes, there's plenty to talk about. So yeah.
Very, very beautiful. So, um, I think we will have to um, we need to dive a little bit back into these experiences that you were talking about, where people were also very interested when they heard your story. Quickly elaborate then what it was about, and then we want to really dive deeper into it. And I just say it's going to be his experience he had as an 8-year-old with kind of a whirlwind that he forgot for a long time. But then when the journey started later, it came back, this memory, and suddenly it made sense. So we want to go there. Then we will
Yes.
talk about his experience where David told me that he thinks was very important work he was doing, like karmic work with his father. We will talk about that and how he makes sense of that experience is his journey in his journey. And then the last thing we want to tackle is what was it that the last one we wanted to talk about?
It was
Are his
an
third
inner eye
eye,
or third eye. Yes, yeah, yeah.
third
If we can,
eye
if we
experiences.
don't have time, it's okay. We can always pack that in another time.
Yeah, I want
Yeah.
to talk about everything because it's so.
Well, I love your enthusiasm, and I hope let's see where the conversation goes.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, just to let people know who maybe haven't seen the earlier video. Yeah, I had a very, I think, life-changing experience encountering a kind of whirlwind entity when I was 8 years old in an old inn on Bodmin Moor. It's almost like a film script, really. And in fact, it was Jamaica Inn, and uh, the fight that I had with that entity trying to when I was trying to get through to my mother's visit my mother to see if she was okay was immense, and it really marked me very deeply. And I never really understood that until, I'm a much older man, and then managed to remember the memory that I just shelved for so long. But it was a massive fight, and it was quite an encounter. And I've come to the conclusion now that yes, it was quite a supernatural experience, and there are some similarities with. There's not many people who write about engagements with whirlwinds, but there's different traditions and religions that talk about that. But also the one that struck me the most was the story of Baba Vanga, the Bulgarian mystic. She in the last century, she lived in the last century, and she became famous because she was known as the blind mystic, and she could, or it was said that she could foresee elements of the future and make predictions for people, and the great and the good, and the devoted used to visit her. But as a young child, I think she was about 11 years old, she was just walking down to the well outside of the village in the countryside, and she was going to get some water, and she encountered a whirlwind. And in her case, the whirlwind grabbed her and took up, and I think moved her a great distance, over a kilometer, I think. And she was battered by the whirlwind, and there was dust and mud in her eyes. And because maybe the health system was not very good at the time, or able to understand how to help her with her damage to her eyes, she eventually, within a year or so, she'd lost her sight completely after that. But she gained a lot in return.
Yeah, she gained
Uh,
another sight.
yeah,
You know what just popped into my
yeah.
mind? Wizard of Oz. But yeah.
Yes, Dorothy. Yeah. And well,
Ah,
I mean, many times I've said to myself, "Well, I'm not in Kansas anymore." So,
yeah, exactly. Wow, interesting.
so
Yeah.
yeah, there are thematics even in conventional cinema that people just touch on things that
Oh yeah,
have a
that.
magical elements to it. I mean, I think in the accounts of her encounter with that whirlwind, they said that it was sort of nature spirits, what the Bulgarians called samodivi, the fairies, I think, nature fairies, and which can have quite strong intentions, and not necessarily well inclined to people, you know.
Wow.
And so she was marked deeply by that.
Mhm.
And I don't claim to go through the Baba Vanga experience, but I was certainly encountering a whirlwind energy from an entity of some sort with an intelligence of some sort. And it was, I could say that it's marked me for life, actually. Maybe not as severely as Baba Vanga, but it's almost like a stick of Blackpool rock that you get at the seaside. I've got the lettering all through me.
Mm.
I've been deeply marked with the experience, and I understand that better now.
Yeah.
So it is a turning point, you could say. Uh,
So how does the adult David Bingham make sense of it?
that's a bigger question. Well, I want to sort of tell your viewers that I'm going to talk about quite a lot of esoteric things that are perhaps a bit strange and uh, sound a bit off the wall. But I want you to assure everyone that I'm okay, at least in my own respect. And it's just a stretch of the imagination. Okay.
And that's what we're here for, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
totally normal, but still having these experiences.
Well, to encounter that which is really strange and for the mind to eventually integrate it is quite a task, I think.
Mhm.
And most of us stay a bit freaked out, and I can understand that. But anyway, uh, yeah, I had I, it really it takes me through to jumping towards my role in my father now. He had advancing dementia, and he was living on his own. Uh,
How
uh,
long ago
'Cause
did that start? Just to have a time
he
frame?
was diagnosed, and he lived with dementia for about 15 years, which was
Mhm.
amazing. And he was diagnosed first in 2006, and in 2009, he ended up living on his own, and he was struggling deeply. And he was a man that I felt very ambivalent about because of the history of our family, and that I had been, I perhaps wrongly, but whatever, I blamed him partly for the descent of my mother and how she suffered, and eventually died quite young
Mm.
after she had been left. So I felt that he was the wronging party. He was the one not doing the good things and not seeing to things properly with his family. So I was quite judgmental of my father, and he was quite in the outside world. He was a bold guy, quite an achiever, and had done very well in the sporting world, and
Mm.
was quite a warrior in his own way, and but he was difficult. He was like the world, all the planets and all the universe revolved around him.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was the center of everything. You
What
know,
was his sport?
so it was in the sphere of football. Yeah.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So so basically, he was an interesting, complex, difficult character who, particularly as a family member, I think people who didn't know him that well probably got on quite well with him. But as a family member, it was tough, you know. And he was on his own. He was abandoned, and I thought to myself, well, you kind of asked for this. You made your own bed. But then I started thinking, well, hang on a minute. You know, uh, you turn your back. What does that say about you? And I decided that in spite of my mixed feelings, my sort of my lack of admission to myself that I was part of a close relationship to him. Despite that, I would put in a good effort to try to help him,
Mm.
and that no matter what would happen, I would do that. So I made a commitment inside myself to do that and to visit him and to eventually build up a network of carers, employed people, and get psychologists involved, doctors, get the medication right, help him so that he could stay a maximum time in his home for as long as possible.
Do you have
And
siblings?
I have a sister who lives in New York, and
Okay, I
but
see.
she
Yeah.
wasn't so directly involved. She was supportive of me, though. So
Yeah.
yeah, so basically, I ended up in a new regime of gradually and increasingly helping my father as a carer, and sometimes sleeping over. Uh, and This began in 2009, and the Kundalini awakening, which again is connected to the relationship with my father, happened in 2017. So it's quite a way in. Um, but After the Kundalini awakening, which we talked about previously, I found that I had certain, what can we say, insights and gifts.
Mm.
It's quite a common thing for people to experience that. But yeah, I could start to see some extra things. For example, I could see deep archetypes within people. I could see it's particularly within I think the left eye. I could see something that was deep in there, often deep in the behind the scenes of who their true nature was,
Mm.
what their true nature was. So I remember one day I was just sitting with my father in the living room. It's a nice sunny day, and we're looking out through the window, and it's very quiet. And then a sort of a lovely, well, a sort of blanket of atmospheric change happened. Something dropped on us.
Mhm.
Nice feeling. Not nice, but sort of like not a bad feeling, but just the atmosphere changed. And it was very calm and very silent. And I was looking at him, and he was quite ill at that time. And I could see that his eye changed. His left eye changed. And I could see there was a different intelligence looking out at me. Um, yeah. And it was completely different. It wasn't like, oh, I'm mistaken. I've just seen something temporarily in someone's eye. No, it was a lot different to that. It was the whole eye was taken over by a sort of murky green, muddy, opaque kind of uh, coloration, and a very different intelligence was looking out at me through that eye. Uh, and uh, and I realized at that point that the intelligence that was in that eye recognized me, and I recognized it. And it wasn't my
Wow.
father, you know. It
And
was the essence of what had I'd fought with when I was 8 years old.
Really?
Uh, yeah, it was that. Yeah, so yeah, it was that being had been. I realized at that point this being has been with him for most of his adult lifetime. It's been a co-inhabitant with him of some degree, and it's probably a lot more common than people think. But I mean, it's still a shock to realize that. And then it made some sense to me that it helped him through difficult times, helped him rise to the challenge of fighting for his success, but also probably it also encouraged him to maybe sometimes climb over the backs of others in order to get that as well, to be
Hmm.
that interested, that dedicated to others to reach those heights. So it was a long-term co-inhabitant that recognized me and was afraid of me.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Uh,
That's,
Yeah, it remembered. It remembered that because I was only 8 years old and I put up one hell of a fight.
yeah. And how
And
did, but at the moment you saw that the entity was
yeah,
kind of taking over,
yeah.
what about the other kind of energy that was always there in your father? Was was this
You
also
mean his soul, his
there?
spirit? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, well, what happens, I think, is that the deep hidden presence within someone that's not them coexists within them and does influence them and feeds off things that it needs.
Hmm.
It's you need to have some kind of opening or vulnerability to let it in the first place, and then there is a mutual exchange going on, and it was a long term being that had been with him. It felt as though it was from murky depths. It wasn't a sophisticated being. It wasn't now that powerful a being, and I was afterwards I came to the conclusion that probably it felt so powerful in those earlier years, not just galvanized by his energy, but also because it was in this haunted house where there's lots of energetics going on anyway, this haunted inn. So
So
it was like it was juiced up and able to do more in that environment.
yeah,
Um,
but
so
what how do you make sense of, so how did it kind of um enter your father, this energy?
could guess, but I only have a guess for that. I think as a young adult in his career, he was under great pressure in a big club that he went to have to succeed, and people were kicking him all over the place. Football seemed to be quite a friendly sport, but actually the real battles go on in the training ground, where
Hmm.
people are trying to take your place, and they don't want you to take their place in the team. So
Yeah.
it's like a very competitive atmosphere sometimes, and they tackle and foul each other badly, and they can injure each other sometimes as well.
Hmm.
So in those days, I think it was a very tough battle for him, and he had to rise to the challenge. And I think some kind of trade was happened inside him in order to push on, in order to succeed. But I mean, I could be wrong. It's possible. But I just sensed it was with him for a very long time.
Okay, and so actually the moment you experienced that whirlwind, it was
Yes.
it was actually that it could have happened that it also entered you, and then you would have done the generational thing to bring that whirlwind into your being.
Well, yes. I mean, I suppose you could say that there's a danger of being occupied also if you are vulnerable to such things. But it wasn't my entity; it was my father's entity,
Mm.
and it was something that. Well, my own impression is that when people are unconscious or asleep at night, they're out of it. And I think that that which is, if you have something within you, it has more freedom to roam.
Yeah.
And I was
Wow.
fueled, if you remember, I was fueled very strongly for the love for my mother. So I was fighting with a good heart. So I don't think I was going to be affected by the energetics, sure, but I wasn't at any vulnerability for being taken over by it or anything like that, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
So because I was fiercely hearted in my actions, so it was like, wow. So anyway, it remembered that and I
Yeah.
remembered it.
Yeah,
uh,
that's
and
it.
uh, and that moment changed, and the eye returned back to normal again.
Yeah,
Then I realized that well, there's there's something here that there's some deeper recognition here that maybe this is part of it is part of the puzzle of what went on all those years ago. Uh, and uh, and I slept over some nights, covering for some of the carers because we didn't always have the rota right, and I had to sleep at his house as well overnight, and I would meditate late into the night sometimes. And uh, I heard on a couple of occasions that which was within him came up the stairs and visited. Uh, so yeah, it's a bit
wow.
creep spill, but yeah, it's this slithery noise coming up the stairs, and all my senses were alerted. The normal thing is, you shiver a bit as a human being, but I was kind of like shivering like a dog, deep shivering, and a couple of times it even generated because it's just post Kundalini. I was aware that I there was flames that developed around me, a
Mm.
protective blue flame, sort of like a Archangel Saint Michael, that kind of thing. I was ignited like a gas burner.
That's
So in
beautiful.
protective reaction to the problem that was coming my way. So
So you think
all this is
there are
the
actually
art of it.
energies, and when you are vulnerable, they can kind of co-inhabit and influence you. That's
I
your
think the vast majority of people don't have co-inhabitants, but
Mhm.
what does happen, so far as I can see, is that the subtle realm elements of the astral, but subtle realm in particular, uh, there are energetics in there that are very basic energetics that feed on things that need energy from people, and they can draw your energy because they're interested in feeding on. Usually, it's negative. You've heard all this before, but provoking and sustaining the human being in a condition of either stress or some kind of negative energy or hatred or anger or some kind of turmoil is good food.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
and
and
yeah,
to also take it a little bit out of the esoteric, I think
mhm.
we tend to talk about this stuff already a lot. We just
Yes, sure.
don't use it. We are not overly open like we are now.
Yes,
But actually,
yes,
people they sense it as well. They know
sure.
actually what we're talking about. That maybe they sit there
Yes,
and they think, "Wow, I don't see that," but yes, you do.
yes.
And for me,
Well,
the
well,
best.
I would invite people, even if people are skeptical of this, that's fine. I'm not trying to persuade you that I'm right. But you have instincts and deeper awarenesses that are present within you that perhaps do give you clues now and then. So, for example, sometimes you might feel that someone's looking at you, but you're not in the direct range of vision.
Mhm.
But you know that someone's looking at you, and you turn around and you see something. So, there are clues that we operate with more sensitive systems than we're actually aware of.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think
so,
for me,
yeah,
especially when I see people under the influence of alcohol, I think most
yes,
people they sense that usually something bad is happening. People they are different. They can be quite different, and often it goes into aggression and so
yes,
it's
yeah,
already it's in the field. It's how it can happen that you somehow lose your core being and something else is taking over.
I think persistent alcohol use creates vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not being judgmental here, but as far as I can see, it in persistent and fairly dependent alcohol use creates vulnerabilities. That's all I would say on that, except that it creates a murkiness within,
Hmm.
and that murkiness is good for that which is interested in being attracted to that. So yeah, that's all I would say on that. But no, I was I was mostly shocked and strange by these experiences as well. I mean, I mean, I had what I thought was mostly a conventional life, and then as an older man, I had Kundalini awakening, and then find myself igniting like a Bunsen burner, you
Yeah.
know. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you can be shocked with my story, but I'm shocked with my own. uh, so it's fair enough, but it depends what you do with the shock. Do you then put it on the side of, well, that's a bit too far for me. I can't even discuss that. And actually, that feels a bit scary to discuss that. Or, my goodness, there is more to us than there's other elements of things going on to us than perhaps we were so aware, or at least there's some kind of extra dimensional activity that normally we're not particularly aware of.
Yeah, but that's
Uh,
the point
yeah,
that people are surely interested in. I mean, you didn't have like you, how was your family? They were not religious or spiritual. You were just like agnostic.
normal. Yeah. Well, no, I was baptized Christian and brought up, I suppose you could say Protestant, but I didn't go to church out of any particular
Mhm.
reason. And no, so the things that occur were unusual to me and deeply unusual. And the ignition into the flame a couple of times was um, it's quite hard to take actually because it's like, well, you have an idea of yourself as being a certain type of human being, and I like my jam and bread and butter, and I like my cup of tea, and this is the kind of person I am. But actually, there's something else. You're also this. My goodness.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. So how
Yeah.
did you
So
integrate
yeah.
that? Really without fear? Were you always open? It didn't
No,
scare
I
you?
mean, I think I've always been a bit sensitive. I mean, as a child, I could see things on the walls and things were moving, and I had a strong imagination and things like that. You know, but yeah, I mean, yes, it's a big challenge, and I think the thing for people, I made the point in the last interview, the thing for people, from my perspective, with Kundalini, is that the biggest journey that you have is the journey of the mind. It's not
Hmm.
all the phenomena. The phenomena is just a little bit of airbrushing in of interesting details that we shouldn't get too possessed by. But the real journey is the journey within, about integrating that which you understand as yourself within the deeper self, the soul spirit. And so far as I'm concerned, that's the big one.
Yeah.
And we all may make progress on that, but I just don't think it's always given enough emphasis. And
Yeah.
that
And so how does that help you that especially the third eye is really it seems to be very open?
yes, well,
You that
yes, yeah,
this
it
helps a
is.
lot to make
It
sense,
does.
right?
Yes. May I return to that just a little bit later? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
Because I want to talk about, if it's okay with you, I want to
Yeah.
talk about a further event with my father that
Hmm.
actually
Oh
it,
yeah.
it actually culminated in everything really coming together finally. And having turned into a Bunsen burner a couple of times, I came along one day because I had a call from one of his carers saying that he was really, really, because uh, he was struggling with his illness and he was disinhibited and it was causing all manner of trouble with them. He was angry as well, and so it wasn't good. And I arrived in that atmosphere, and he was in the living room, and I was ushered in, and I didn't this time sit next to him or anything. I actually kneeled before him, and he was in a bit of a state. And I just kneeled before him and I held out my hands. And I said, "Give me your hands, Dad." No. And then instantly my left hand ignited into a golden energy, lovely, like soul-like energy. And then I noticed that, interestingly, that his hand ignited as well.
Wow.
And we were holding like that. And it was golden energy again. It was like, oh, really beautiful. That kind of divine feeling, beautiful. And I was able then to have a conversation with him in that state. I said, "Can you feel that, Dad?" He said, "Yes, I can." And I said, do you know what it is? I said, no, I don't think I do. And I said, this is you. This is who you are.
Wow.
Uh, and uh, and you've got this memory problem where it's getting worse for you. But I want you to know I'll always be with you to hold your hand, to show you who you truly are. And this was like magic for whatever was going on between us. It transformed the air between us, and I could feel like, I mean, it's stupid because we were in a room, but there were like clouds above us, and they were parting, and I could hear angelic music in the background, and I could feel a divine light shining down on us, like a celestial experience. That
So,
it was so dramatic what was going on the ground that 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 was being recognized from above.
and that was
So
after your Kundalini already awakened.
yes,
You
yes,
were
about two.
you were sensitive to that.
Yes, so yeah, and what happened at that point was I think he was freed of that which was within him.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah.
it left him during his lifetime, didn't stay with him to his death and then leave. So he was a freed spirit. There was none of that burden upon him anymore. Uh, and uh, and and in the days and weeks that followed, I kind of got to realize the profoundness of that experience because I'd never had a kind of celestial, strange experience like that before. And I got to feel that all the chains that bound me to through lineage, through the maybe particularly through the male line, through him and his father and his father's father, and all the way through all these invisible ropes and chains that
Mm.
connected us were broken,
Wow,
but broken in a nice way.
this is so
It was
nice.
like you think you are bound by love, and that is a good chain. But actually, it was like there were no chains anymore. But I could feel nothing but pure love uh, for this man and what was going on. So I was transformed within that, and he was transformed within that. He became a much easier going guy. He still had a little edge to him, but it was much reduced. So
And
I
what about,
actually witnessed during my lifetime and his lifetime
yeah,
transformation within the family setting.
did it also
Uh,
help him to gain you know, I'm just interested if we are just looking at his example that dementia, it was if I can interpret it a little bit, maybe the other energy was taking over and he lost his memory more and more.
Possible, but I think it possibly just an illness in this
Yeah.
case. I mean, I don't rule out what you're saying, but he uh, he had the entity with him a long time. So if we were to follow your line of thinking, well, perhaps the illness is a development of the feeding habits or whatever, but possibly not in this case.
Mm.
I think mostly entities that live a long time with people want them to live in order to sustain them. But there are entities, it seems to me, or at least I've encountered one or two, that actually seek to, yes, eventually drain their hosts and take everything that they have,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that they think they have.
Yeah.
But this was not that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Basically, I got to do a very biblical thing, really. The son saved the father and saved himself in the process. And I never thought in my lifetime I would ever uh, involved in such a thing. But it was absolute liquid gold. It transformed more and more and more things. And it taught me so much about how I got things wrong in the past about, the idea of being a child of two parents and what that means and your obligations and how you ally yourself to people, and how you disregard other people. So it really comes back to a very human story about what role does a child play in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think there's potentially a very special role. I know children are born for all sorts of reasons, and we don't always plan to have children, but uh, they occupy the potential to fulfill the potential of the two parents. They occupy that middle ground. My mother and my father were quite polarized people, very different. Mother was home bird, very kind, all heart, loved her family very deeply. My father was out in the world doing stuff, not really caring so much for what was happening behind him, you know, uh, and to resolve these two aspects of your parents, however they are, and to become that which is almost like the genetic realization of what they should be, what they are actually fully. Then I think that's great because all of us are trying in our trajectory of our lives to become more fulfilled and do more things, but perhaps your parents, despite their good efforts, didn't always achieve the things they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So what you're doing, because you're the genetic inheritance, and then right in the middle of these two people, is you're actually in some ways, I think, finding the route to fulfill the elements of them that were never properly fulfilled within their lives, because you're
Yeah.
carrying that within you now. No.
So
So this is not so easy. Well, it's esoteric, but it's not scary esoteric. It's like there's a deep hidden meaning in the role of a child, in terms of its realization of itself, embodied realization of itself as being a conjunction of those two beings.
yeah. And yeah, I mean, we hear that from different teachings and psychology. It's everywhere, kind of, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're born, if you have very different parents, or they don't seem to have, of course will have connections and overlaps, but with some parents there actually are quite large gaps. So I think psychologically it's quite hard for a child born within that gap to orientate itself, because it will generally lean one way or the other
mhm,
towards, it'll gravitate either to the mother or the father, depending on things that move it. So what you end up is being not the realization of both parents, but leaning more towards one,
yeah.
especially if there's a large gap between the parents.
Hmm.
And that's my take on it anyway.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's something very, very important there. And it's not that you're not being yourself realizing all of this. You're being very much your true self, but it's the realization of this genetic dynasty as well, this push behind you. You so in some ways I am my father, and in some ways I am my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got my mother's love and my father's warrior spirit. And they're somehow fused within this person called David, who's telling strange stories. so, so that's it's so far as I can see at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully put. Really, it's nice. So
The other thing I would say, sorry, go on. Yeah.
for you? So what was the main thing that made you do it like you did it? Like, no, how do you say? Uh, like
No fear.
no, not fear, but like not being angry at your father, or to really
Well, I
feel that
have to say,
anger and
I was
disappointment.
no, yes, anger and disappointment, very real, and certainly not a saint, and mixed up feelings, churned up feelings, even as an adult, because we like to think we grow up and we become more independent. A lot of us still blame our parents for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible, really.
Yeah.
Like 50-year-old person saying, "Oh, if it wasn't for this, I would have blah blah blah," blaming somebody. It's like, for God's sake, take a responsibility for your own situation a little bit. And I remember there was one incident where, because I was so distant from my father, I was in his house, and it's smell based basically. I was looking in the mirror and just cleaning my hands in the basin or whatever, and I smelled this smell, and it was very familiar to me. And I went and I sniffed my armpit. I'm sorry. I sniffed my armpit, and it was my father.
Crazy.
This person I did not want to be. I am him. You know,
Oh,
I've become my dad. Oh my God. because I remembered as a child being on the beach and him holding me with sweaty arms and stuff, and
Ah,
that
wow.
fragrance, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's who I am. You know, you've
Oh my
become
God,
this
I have
person
it inside of me. Yeah. Yeah.
you are ambivalent about and you didn't want to be really, and you were distancing yourself from this person that you felt that you could sort of push away from and say, oh no, I'm not going to be like him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, genetics are giving you a different message,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a penny dropping for me. Oh, well, I don't think you can go into denial anymore here, David. There's something a bit stronger than just your opinion here, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
yeah, so we feel those frictions, those that potential awarenesses around these kind of things that to do our relationships with our family. And
Yeah.
I could no longer have the illusion, the mind-led illusion that somehow I was a different David doing my own thing, and never uh, owing anything to what went on before me.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
sort of dissolves. And the unity I feel now is not a unity that's bound to my family. It's a unity that is immersed in deep deep love, and the breaking of the chains did not create any problem in terms of my sense of good feeling for people. All it did was it freed me.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
yeah,
I think it's really what helps me sometimes when I'm also like still in the victim mode about
mm,
certain things is really to just hold on, tricking my own mind that I tell myself, look, the life is really given to you. It's happening for you, and not to you.
yes,
So
you're not just a
So
victim.
the
Yes, exactly.
yeah, so the people around you that hurt you, they are actually the biggest teachers, and they don't have a funny role. They came here to pick you, and it's not funny to be the evil guy, but it's here to you have to find out what
Yes,
you have to overcome. And sometimes if someone picks you, it might be you have to find your own boundaries or to say no, this is not okay, and then it's already done. So
yes, yes.
yeah. And sometimes
Oh,
it's
yeah.
to see the beauty in the other person and to still help. You have
Mhm.
to you have to decide which teaching is
Yes.
coming for you.
Well, I mean, to build on what you're already saying, if you're reacting negatively or against something, you might even become the thing that you are hating.
Hmm.
So, is that a solution? Not really. No. So it's a nice pointer in the other direction that you're talking about. So it's better to investigate and realize, well, what is it that's triggering me here, and why is that so? And what is
Yeah,
it in my nature, that's
and
getting rubbed up this way? Yeah.
I think there it's important to see the peak events in your life to find out, is it with me now? Like when I take your story, for another person, it could also be the teaching. I really have to set boundaries and know it's too much to care for my father right now. I just, so that people don't come into the martyr mode, because
Yes.
sometimes the teaching can be really, when you look back, what was always happening in your life, and you still didn't find out how to have proper, healthy boundaries. And only
So
from that point you can help out of the heart
this
and
is
not,
this is
you
this
know.
is very wise. It strikes me as being your words are very wise. Thank you. I think the decision I made to involve myself in my father, in spite of my experience, mixed feelings, was not a sentimental decision out of obligation. It
Yeah.
was a decision that was made in the wisdom that I could suffer and that I might have years of suffering even. And, you fear, especially an ill parent, that it might drag you down. It's a slippery slope. As they get worse, you might suffer even more. So, well, if you make a decision to try to make progress on that, then yeah, you have to be aware what the responsibility of the decision is, rather than just falling into an automatic pattern. Oh, I have to care for them. I have to sacrifice myself. Uh, and so many people who identify themselves as caring people do that, and they end up being frazzled by the experience. And I understand that. And that's the most common thing. But the curious thing for me is that instead of being frazzled, it was the key to my self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew it.
Yeah.
So curious thing is it's almost like opposites, isn't it? If you, I'm not recommending this for everybody, but sometimes if you find the most difficult thing inside yourself to actually do and face up to, if you apply yourself to that without thought of gain and you keep going on that and you do it gently with a compassionate heart, but still fairly relentlessly keep on going and doing that, you're doing a very deep form of karma yoga,
Mm-hmm.
kind of deep service. And you're not thinking of getting a bonus from it or an outcome. But I've realized now that what I was doing inadvertently was I opted on the particular path of karma yoga with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And my efforts and my intentions and my wishes to assist were all formed on the basis of the understandings of karma yoga without me understanding that at all. so, so
Yeah.
basically, it's no wonder there was a reaction in the universal, because when it reached key points, there was very big, deep seeds being sown that had a wider effect beyond just the two of us. This is where I mean, again, I'm only referring from personal experience because there's all different types of form of yoga, there's Bhakti yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, but Karma yoga was the formative thing for me
Mm-hmm.
without knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, if you want the express train, and this is not for many people, but if you want the express train route, deeply apply yourself to the hardest thing that you can find that's inside yourself that you really don't want to do,
Yeah.
that you
Exactly. And
should be
but
doing.
that can be totally different for everybody. But that's why you
Of
have to
course,
listen deeply,
of course.
right? Because
I don't
you can
recommend
be the
this for
nice,
everybody.
you can be the nicest person, and at the end you are frustrated because there were no fruits out of that, and that was the wrong devotion then. You know?
Yes,
But
but then, but
you
for
just have
all
to
of
do
no,
it
it's quite
without.
important. That's quite important what you just said, that you're disappointed that there are no fruits, because that shows that perhaps during the process there was some expectation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you have no expectation and you're doing it just for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
then that's more karma yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever comes of its own accord, and it's a surprise.
Yeah.
So it's not plotted by or even hoped for or even gently anticipated by the mind. It's not something that is part of a grand design that you developed.
Mm-hmm.
It's something else than that. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, I think the example I'm giving of that is an extreme example,
Yeah.
and there are lots of other ways of enriching one's life without actually risking all, perhaps, in situations like that. You know.
Yeah. So let's dive into the third eye.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. Dive into the third eye. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's so
have. I have quite.
important. Many
Yeah.
people, many people,
Yeah.
I think they have a wrong, also a wrong understanding there,
Yes.
and they try and try their best. So just lead us to your understanding. Well,
Okay.
yeah, what's the
First thing I would say to people who, from various situations, who are experiencing Kundalini, who are wondering when am I going to get my third eye thing going, all that kind of stuff, is please don't worry and don't put mind pressure on yourself. That which is meant to be within your equation is meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a far greater wisdom working within you, guiding the development of the energies through you than you could possibly know of your own accord.
Mm-hmm.
So if lots of good things are happening to you, but you're saying to yourself, oh, I don't know why I'm not getting the third eye. Well, it's because at this particular time, perhaps it's not meant to be, or
Mhm.
maybe it's to come later.
Yeah, or you
And
need
also,
you
yeah,
need to have another ability, and when you are just focusing on that third eye, then something else you miss it. So just
it
be.
shouldn't be mind-led either. If you want to become a wizard or things like that, if you want to be someone who becomes a manipulator of time and space and can imprint your thoughts on events, but led mainly intentionally by the mind, then yeah, you can do that. But good luck to you. I don't think it's a very good way of doing it.
Mhm.
So um, the opening to the third eye seems to happen in conjunction with the rising of the Kundalini energy and stabilization of the Kundalini energy, hopefully. And also, I would say, also it really is helped by the rising of prana as well in the body
Mhm.
system. Um, I was watching a guy on, uh, um, yeah, a lot of people in Kundalini know him, Igor Kuvayev, speaking on one of his videos about,
Yeah.
and he's one of the, I mean, I don't always agree with him. I like watching him, but there's, he's very, for me, he's very right about the importance of prana because not many people emphasize that as being a separate energy rising within the
Yeah,
system.
I will put a
So
link. I will put a link to his YouTube channel because we're talking about
yeah,
him. And I think he's very down. He's just very strict, and you will see when you're watching him. He, I think he's such a character, and that's also what I like about him because he's not that saint. He has quite an opinion, and sometimes you also feel that he's quite fed up that people have that a lot of wrong understanding, because as long as people
I
have
like
a
that.
wrong, it's so funny
Yeah,
to watch him. So
yes.
I like him a lot. I will put a link down because he's really good in just coming to listen. We're not talking about.
Yes, I agree with you. I wish to focus on the positives with him as well.
Yeah,
That he has very strong commitment and intention and seriousness about the
exactly.
subject that he's studying, and he wants to find a way of conveying that well to people.
Uh-huh.
And naturally, you would present your findings or your understandings as being quite factual,
Mhm,
as like a teaching.
mhm,
That this is so, and if you do this, then you do that. Well, this is fine. This is just one way of expressing something.
mhm.
So it's just the way it is, you know. So, but on that, some of the messages are very interesting, you know. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so anyway, yes, third eye. Yeah. Okay. Well, I about two years into my awakening in 2017. Uh, I remember that I was starting to get a kind of pulsation in my forehead. And it was sort of quite low down, nearly between the eyes, but just slightly above. And it was like a little pulsing thing, like a little heartbeat thing. Uh, and eventually that pulsation felt a little bit like an eye, but not properly like an eye, not like an eyeball here, but it felt like something was opening a little bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Or you could say it's like a two-leafed flower. Sorry, a flower, two petals, just opening. And eventually, something had a sensation of some opening there. And what began initially was just kind of swirling chakra-based colors that I saw. I think a lot of people get this, especially in meditation and also in third eye experience. They get to see certain spheres of coloration in their inner vision, and it's almost like mists moving and energetics within that. And I certainly got that. I particularly got a purple color, which is related to one of the higher chakras and the third eye as well. So I got that, and then I was a little bit surprised one day to see that it actually took form sometimes.
Mm.
There were shapes and images. So and mostly I got this in the morning after I wake up because what really encourages your third eye experience, or in my experiences, is being relaxed, having your nervous system relaxed. You're awake, but you haven't really kickstarted your day yet.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so it's like your nervous system, this capacity to dominate and interfere with your other awareness hasn't really got going yet.
Yeah.
So in that sort of state, or you can deep rest during the day, and still have these experiences.
Hmm. Hmm.
So anyway, yeah, that developed, and eventually it developed into all manner of things appearing, and some very interesting, strange things.
I
uh,
hear that.
and it, yeah, yeah, it was. My God, it was like it's like the deep well of the Jungian psyche, or the Freudian id, the deep, dark, still black water that exists underneath us, of our psyche, is filled with all these kind of universal thematics that
Mhm.
somehow
Like
uh,
archetypal.
like, and also that they come and they're represented to you in an image that you can recognize. So the soul is some kind of guiding system within this.
Yeah.
So basically, that which is shown to you, you have the maximum chance of recognizing, because somewhere within your brain, you've sort of seen this in a book or something. And so it's represented as that image for you, so
Yeah.
you can understand it. So there's an intelligence at work, but I didn't get that at first. I mean, a lot of people who speak about these on Kundalini forums, I mean, they may get some nice third eye experiences, but also they get some terrors. They get some really menacing things, like like sometimes like ayahuasca experiences that go wrong, that kind of thing. Where this being was appearing and it was trying to eat me, or these aliens arrived and they were trying to operate on me, and blah blah blah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's very, very fear triggering and very fear generating.
So is it
Uh,
about where your state of mind and how your emotions are at the moment you are actually watching through the third eye?
yes.
So
Well,
you
I
have
think some
to
people like some. It doesn't. For example, I don't particularly perceive now through the third eye when we're having this conversation. It's mainly when I'm relaxed, and usually when I close my eyes, my proper eyes, I get to see what's going on. So it's just different ways for different people.
but
Uh, yeah.
how is it for you? So when you are in a room and you close your eyes and you have the access to the third eye, is it going to show you what is happening in the room or just with your state of being in?
Uh, I feel that the universal, the external, is the internal universe. So that my experience is that which is without is within.
Mm.
Uh,
Right.
so the vastness of the universe within that you experience within the third eye is a representation of all that goes on,
Mm.
but in interdimensionally. So, for example, I mean, initially, I think I got a lot of subtle stuff. I think I had a lot of stuff to process, and I still do, but a lot of dark stuff came my way,
Mhm.
uh,
Beginning
because
or
it's yeah, yeah. It's like well, it's a bit like the Buddhist wheel of heaven and hell. You see all elements working
Mhm.
eventually. You see the angels, you see the devils, you see all sorts of in between things and critters and things that things that aren't even certainly not human, and things that were human but are not human now.
Mhm.
And you see dead souls, spirits as well sometimes, and you can actually see fragments uh, of people.
Mhm.
So it's like a thought or a strong impression someone left maybe many hundred years ago, and it's still out there floating. And it has a consequence out in this other dimension. And it's fascinating. Instead of just giving into fear, I eventually, fortunately, became more interested in allowing people to, if they do experience this, to gently uh, pursue it, but in a way that doesn't let the fear grab you too much, because it becomes more and more interesting. You realize that example, with the thought entity thing, which was part of a human, but now is just a fragment of a face with one expression. That entity has no awareness of itself beyond that which it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a thinking entity that reflects, it might be just very basic feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to put the puzzle together, and I started thinking, oh gosh, well, within the human realm of experience, we generate this.
Yeah.
So this is out there. And you and I, in our everyday lives, there's something really important that happens or something triggers us, then we have an impulse that is powerful enough to generate this within this other sphere, this astral world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and then I started to realize I moved from sort of witness stroke victim of whatever was happening within the third eye. I started to realize, well, hang on a minute, we're also the generators of this.
Yeah.
Uh, and this was a really big transition move because I started to realize that there was an interactive quality between me and the environment and the third eye.
Mm.
So I was a bit slow to learn, but I got there eventually. And it was like I realized that I could put intentions out to the beings that I saw, and they would react accordingly, or I could ask questions of them, and things like that, without necessarily trusting the answers I was given. So it's like I had a healthy dose of how can I say skepticism operating in the sense that I knew that this was another dimension of experience, but it wasn't one necessarily to define me, or
Yeah.
that was to
That's
be
so
believed in
important,
wholeheartedly,
right? Yeah.
without
I see
having
that with
critical
people.
awareness.
I see
Yeah.
that with people who do ayahuasca, and then they think whatever comes there, and then they have this wording of the plant told me, and then my alarm signals are like, yeah, whew, because yeah, she's just showing you what is in your field, but now you have to. She's just plainly showing you what is in the field
Yes.
without
Yes.
judging it, but it is your work to now interpret it. And I heard a lot of beautiful stuff, like people who told me then that the plant told them, you have to go out now and vomit. And they did that 3 times and nothing came out. And then they sat
Oh,
down and the next time the plant told them go out and vomit, they said, no, I'm not going to. And then the plant told them, now I can trust you. And it's like, it's again, you have to really, you are the, the
you're
person who has,
you're yes. This is a big invitation, but it's an invitation for the mind to find its place. It's not an invitation just to become a witness or deeply involved in the great stories and skirmishes of what goes on in the astral universe. Uh, you can get lost in that. You're like Doctor Who and the TARDIS, just going different places. Uh, it's not about that. It's actually the attraction of being immersed in a great voyage in Germany and journey is of course has its fascinations, but uh, there is a discernment needed in the human being, and the soul is inviting you to join the party of soul language to actually not enjoy, sorry, but absorb and integrate that which is going on. So instead of seeing as other to yourself, you eventually start to say, well, this is part of me. This
Mhm.
is an expression of me. And this is a big, big journey for a lot of us, and especially for me, because I got a lot of dark stuff to begin with. And so I moved from being witness victim to being slightly intrigued, interactive person who realized that there are consequences from what we do.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I've moved from that now to mostly, or starting to at least, be a generative uh, being within that sphere. So basically, as long as the mind is in unity to the soul, uh, then it's okay to make generative impulses within that sphere. If you're just a slightly gifted person who has third eye vision and is operating mainly in the mind, then where are your intentions going to lead you in all this great
Mm.
maze? You
Yeah.
know, it's much it's not just much safer, it's actually the only way to do it is to be in yoke to yourself, your true beingness. And then actually, then you can, your intentions really do have consequences because it seems to me, at least, the astral filters into all aspects of life, including the gross material world that we experience here. The astral is very much influencing that all the time. It's a key element to it. So then you sort of you're going into the realm of people like Meher Baba talked about and others about the causal. So basically, within this sphere of what seemed to be just initially third eye awakening, you discover you're a causal agent within the universal spheres. And if you're, in good yoke to yourself, you can actually put intentions out for the benefit of yourself and for other people, and the well-being and the healing of things, if possible. So you then become an active agent within that sphere. 007.
So how much can a person then also, for me, because what is interesting when you have that third eye vision, it's also actually there to, it's another way of seeing things, like more the, for me again, more the archetypical stuff that is actually working within us. And then when you have that vision, you start to understand the world, the material world better, that it actually works exactly the same.
Yes.
But
Yes. I mean, I want to make a note of caution for people and build on what you say. Uh, uh, Yogananda, I love some of the things he writes, Parahamsa Yogananda. Uh, but he was quite cautious. I mean, he was totally immersed in the inner eye sphere, but he was still cautious about it. And he said basically, the guidance that you need is from God.
yeah.
God, there's nothing between you and your connection with God. It's you and the infinite. And all that appears in between might sound very convincing. It might sound very lucid and good advice and various things like that. But he said, I think I'm paraphrasing now, but basically, even the angels are slightly removed from God.
Yeah.
So even if you're getting it from what seems to be the most trusted source, it's still not the complete divine. It's only
Yeah.
a partial element of that which is within the sphere.
Yeah, exactly.
And they might be giving you the best of their knowledge, but their knowledge isn't the infinite.
Yeah.
And this is probably going back to where Baba Vanga was, bless her. I mean, she said that how did you get your knowledge of being able to predict future events and things like that? Well, she said, well, there are special beings that come and speak to me and give me advice and tell me what's happening. So there you go. She was getting an interpreted version of events from an incomplete being that wasn't in complete unity with the divine.
Yeah. So
So
how does it help?
you're gonna get distortions from that,
Yeah.
and some things might be right and some things might be wrong. So you're like, it's like in my mind she was like the postman. She was taking the mail and giving it to other people. So
Yeah.
so it's like, that if that's your source and that's what you trust, then you're not, you know. And then if it doesn't materialize, then maybe you can explain different timelines happened and it could have happened, blah blah blah. But I think there's actually distortions. There's distortions in the broadcasts. There's distortions in the airwaves.
Always, even in the third eye. And I mean, I think the most
Yeah.
important thing for people who are also listening, first of all, they maybe have their own experiences with spiritual um, stuff, or they are actually searching for truth. And I think we all want to hear from somebody there. Look, you just open your third eye and then you have all the guidance you need.
Yeah.
So, it's like, and I think it's really
Yes,
important,
you're right. Right. Yeah.
to tell people, now look, you are the agency, and you really actually you can trust only yourself in connection with the most divine, and all
Yes.
else is all could also be a distraction. So
Yes, and it preoccupies the mind. You're so right. It becomes then a new object of fascination, the weird and the wonderful. And what did I see the other week? And I can tell people about that and blah de blah.
yes.
Yeah, it becomes a mind object of interest. And oh, I'm this kind of person. I can have visions. I can see things. So
Mhm.
this then becomes your self-identified construct as a person that can see these things. But actually, the journey's richer than that. You don't need to fall into that.
Mm.
Yeah, this is just part of the expansion of the spheres of what you are, but it doesn't
So
mean that you have to swallow it all.
how does it work
Uh,
for you the best then? So when do you go in the visions of third eye, and how does it help you?
well, I mean, it's hard to say that in a nutshell. I can try. Uh, I think I expand by understanding more of the deeper nature of the self.
Mhm.
I think that which I think I am expands just a little bit more each time. And if you embrace more of this, like the Buddhist wheel of everything, where you have all the forces and everything, if you can integrate more of that in and understand that all of that belongs to you,
Mhm.
then you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And you don't need to worry about what comes next and all that kind of stuff about, I hope one day I can see eye to eye with God and all of that. Well, actually, you are already, in some sense, seeing eye to eye with God. You're experiencing the richness and diversity of the hidden self.
Mhm.
And so I very much encourage people to, when it comes to do their best with the third eye thing, but at the same time, you can get bogged down with it, and it can be like a real problem. And a lot of people are so protected, innerly protected, well protected, that they don't even get to get the third eye experience.
Mhm.
It isn't for them at this time. And that's because maybe there's some fragility there that they're being looked after, and they don't need to go with that
Yeah.
because it's not it's like the toughest boot camp you ever went to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think
it's like yeah,
what you learn with the third eye is to really hold your own energy, because otherwise you're going to be thrown. Pew, pew. And
yes,
for me, it's like when I am in that sphere, I feel like, wow, you have to be so strong to hold your core, because otherwise you get immensely scared and thrown back and forth.
yes.
So yeah.
It's like it's the biggest workout for the psyche that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And
Hold
yeah,
your
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And it's there are clues to pick up along the way. The symbolisms. Eventually, you start to realize, well, I'm generating some of these symbolisms because they're coming to me in a way that I can recognize.
Hmm.
And the images that are shown have a reference point in my deeper self because I can best understand that. So there's some intelligence showing me this.
Yeah.
So suddenly you start to realize the interplay.
Yeah.
And actually, that helps with the fear because so then you start to feel, oh, crikey, this is all me, maybe. It is external, and there is apparently an operating intelligence that seems separate to me, but in a very fundamental sense, it is also me.
Hmm. And again, for
This is,
people who are longing to have third eye vision, try it with the material world to interpret
yes, yeah,
everything that is coming to you. Like, oh, okay, maybe
yeah.
this is just symbolism for me. Try that,
Mm.
navigate your life exactly with that approach. It will be much more richer and interesting. So,
There are lots of good old texts that describe the preparation of your embodied self for further developments that might happen along the line. And the best one that I still feel, in my view, I really enjoy reading is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras.
mhm.
And if you wanted a short DIY kit on how to, yes, hello, how
Yeah.
wonderful. Great that you have it because I mean, it's a very by this Rishi Patanjali. It's a very very articulate understanding of the development of the means of the self to expand, and mostly he emphasizes to begin with as a kind of hatha yoga, in strengthening the body,
Hmm.
gaining a core sort of strength and sort of
Yeah.
a platform from which to build the other things,
Yeah.
and then moving on from that
Yeah.
pranayama and various other things. So I get a lot from that, and I can recognize myself in elements of that he talks about.
Nice. So
Uh,
I will put a link
yeah,
to
yeah.
this beautiful book in in
Yeah.
the descriptions below for the people who are watching and interested.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's slowly wrap it up, even though we could again dive even deeper and deeper, but we will have another
Sure.
opportunity. But David, is there something that you really want to let people know at the end?
Well, I mean, in the two interviews so far, I tried to emphasize that it's quite possible to be a relatively relatively balanced human being, and to also integrate experiences that are what would seem to the normal person perhaps to be unbalanced.
Hmm.
So the test of how well you're doing with that which is weird and esoteric and pushing you in various ways is how well are you still framed to your core, the nature of your soul and who you are? Are you still operating from that basis? And and do you have compassion for yourself and forgiveness for yourself and all of these things? Less judgment. My encouragement would be whatever flavors you get in the esoteric world, it doesn't matter so much as a good heart and an expanded self. So
Oh,
that would be my view.
nice.
Yeah.
Best best words at the end. It's really nice, and people shouldn't make stress um again in this experience. So we
No
always
pushing.
stress ourselves and want to push ourselves somewhere. So
This driving will, let that go a little bit. It's always
yeah,
better to let that go. Yeah.
mm, very nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, David.
Thank you. It was great.
And we talk soon. And let's
I
see
hope.
what people will say, and just leave your comments also when you have questions. Um, then David is happy to elaborate on that. It's beautiful. What is going on also now in this community, that people, they really open up and they ask their questions, and it's so beautiful.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you
talk
again.
soon. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.